Johnson, who coached Colin in college, I saw them win a game where they were playing 4 against 5. And you know what I paid attention to then that he has now? He has a rational confidence, Jacoby.
So much confidence.
And you know I love that trait. You know how much I love that trait. Even with his tail hanging down in the back. He knew that the big three was debuting. He knew his backcourt mate wasn't playing. That means more minutes, more shots, and more opportunities to be an equal opportunity employer, because that's what he was. Because he was scoring on everybody. Kyrie, Harden, he was scoring on Harris, he was scoring on KD. It was from 3, it was runners, it was clutch, playing good D. This game showed why that level of potential that I told you, that as you and many call them, sex land in Cleveland, have become the East Coast version of the Mama's Boys in Portland.
Yep.
That's what they hope this backcourt becomes. Colin Sexton stole the show on his home floor.
He absolutely did steal the show. And like you mentioned, Darius Garland was not in the game. Garland might play tomorrow night when they play these Nets again. But it wasn't just the threes in overtime. And he scored 22 points in the 2 overtimes combined. He had 20 straight for his team at one point. But it was the defensive plays, the offensive rebounds, locking up on some of the guards, flailing and getting a call that eventually got overturned, a key call on Kyrie. It was a complete game by him. Really love what he did. But let's turn our attention to the Brooklyn Nets and the superstar trio, because I watched every second of this game. The Nets came out so hot. The Nets hit their first 10 shots, and we're just sitting there like, this Nets team is going to be a juggernaut. Not only are they going to blow through this team, they're going to blow through this conference, and that was not the case. What do you think needs to be tweaked and adjusted from the Nets side of the ball based on what you saw last night?
Ooh, that was ice games right there. That finger roll. Here's what's going to happen when you have a dynamic of guys that have been all NBA. 2 of these players have been MVPs in Harden and KD. 2 of these guys have been champions in KD and Kyrie. Is figure out the pecking order. And what I see is James Harden officially, based on playmaking ability, is going to be the point guard. Kyrie Irving is going to play sniper shooting type guard. And KD is going to be who he's always been. And so what they can't do, however, Jacoby, is take turns. And what happened in the previous game in which they performed so well, you saw Joe Harris play well. You saw DeAndre Jordan play well. And so these guys can get their numbers, but it's how you doing it. And they did a lot of ISO in this game. You said that they were 10 for 10, right? And normally when you're 10 for 10, you're winning by a large margin, but they weren't getting stops, and they weren't necessarily doing it off of movement. They were doing it off great individual offensive ability. So as they progress, that's what's going to happen. Not take turns, but include each other more in the action in order to make plays.
I think you hit on some of the key points. And again, we're not going to use a 1-game sample size to extrapolate the rest of the season, but they're playing Cleveland, who is literally last place in offensive efficiency in the entire league, but had trouble getting stops when they needed to. A lot of isolation, not necessarily playing off each other. And don't forget, to bring in James Harden, they had to sacrifice what was one of their key strengths, which was their depth. Last night, James Harden and Kevin Durant played career high in minutes. Now it helps there's an extra 10 minutes in the game, but they played career high in minutes. Depth over time may be a problem as you put more and more minutes on these superstar players who have a lot of them on their shoulders on both sides of the floor when you're looking at a long playoff run that the Nets are. However, we're going to get another look at this team, these 2 teams on Friday. Maybe Sexland comes together, but something tells me that the Nets will start hot and stay hot on Friday night, unlike they did last night. Now, Jalen, that was a great game, and we all wanted to see all 3 of those players play on the floor in that Eastern Conference matchup, but there was a bigger, perhaps better Eastern Conference matchup, and that was between the Sixers and the Celtics, and this game was about one man. Which man am I discussing?
Joel Embiid. The big fella had his way. And this is what fans of the game hope to see a healthy Embiid do on a nightly basis, because he can. And when you start talking about the top 6 to 10 players in the league, Joel Embiid is in that conversation, Jacoby. He's a capable 3-point shooter, but he's a dominant post player. The most dominant in the league, turning over both shoulders, up and unders, signature moves, jump hooks, all of that. You put a small guy on him, he's going to punish him. And so they do a terrific job of understanding to get him the ball in the operating area. And though Tice had a good game for the Celtics, he doesn't have the physical build to play against Embiid, as you see in that clip right there. And Tristan Thompson doesn't have the offensive prowess to make him work. So he's going to be a matchup nightmare each time they face the Boston Celtics.
We've always talked about the Boston Celtics, and the Rockets last year got so much attention for going small, but the Celtics were already there playing Daniel Tice at center and not really having a true big man outside of Cantor last year. They bring in Thompson. You expect Thompson to be that. He has not been that this year. And as you mentioned, Tice had a great game on one end of the floor, but on the other end of the floor, he was getting cooked by Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid is now shooting 37% from three. Think about that. He's usually around 30 to 33%, 37% from three. He's got his turnovers down to less than they've ever been in his career. He's playing great. And this team has got the fourth in defensive efficiency. A lot of people don't think about the Sixers as truly a defensive juggernaut, but they're fourth in the league right now in defensive efficiency. They look really good heading into the midway of the season. Hopefully they can stay on top of the East as they are right now by a half a game.
And he's not going to forget that. That was pregame. Then we get going. Nets were hot off the beginning here. Isolated against Cedi Osman. Kyrie, crossover. That was pretty. Brooklyn would keep it going here. Still in the first. Nets are up 6. That's a turnover by Cleveland. Harden, KD, Kyrie, all running the fast break. That puts Colin Sexton and Osman in a tough spot on D, but Harden finds Kyrie, easy layup. And when I say easy, I mean easy. They started 10 for 10 from the field against Cleveland, but they were down 2 at the half. Let's go to the third. This is when the defensive issues began for Brooklyn. Down 4 off the Irving miss. Cavs in transition. That's Larry Nance Jr. The pass to Sexton, and that's pretty. Driving to the hoop. As you look again, because Harden tries to steal the ball, and try is the key word there. Kyrie lets Sexton by a measly. KD doesn't even try to contest the shot. That's an issue. Cavs were 11 of 13 on uncontested field goals in the third, and they were up by 9 heading into the final quarter. 6 minutes to go. Down 8, trying to come back. This is Harden. We know he can do that. He's been doing that for years. He finished with a 21-point triple-double. Under 3 to go. Brooklyn down 5. KD weaving his way through traffic there and hits the jumper. He had a team-high 38 points. They'll take that. Nets cut it to a one-possession game. Joe Harris. They paid him all kinds of money. He misses, but Kyrie does not. There for the big putback as you look again. The offensive board paying off there. Kyrie had 37. 11 seconds to go. Sexton with the turnover there. Kyrie with the ball. Watch what happens here. Foul called, lots of contact, but by whom? It's ruled an offensive foul. Nets would challenge, but look, I mean, hey, the elbow right there, they would challenge. It would actually be reversed. What? Yes, I know. We got to go to overtime because the result of that was a jump ball. So a minute left in overtime. Cleveland up by 3. Larry Nance Jr., clutch from the wing. We are tied at 120. Defense, not really. Harden drives, kicks it to an open Jeff Green. He's been around for like 100 years, and he knocks it down. Nets up by 3. 5 to go. Still 3-point game. Sexton over Kyrie with 1.2 seconds left. I said remember his name. Look at the bench. Kevin Love. Remember he won the ring with Kyrie in 16. Asterius Garland their height. 1.2 left. KD, he's played 50 minutes here, Jay. Gets a look, falls short. So we need a second overtime. Beautiful. Just over 3 to go. Cavs up 4. Kyrie, he's played 48. Remember they were thinking about his conditioning as he tried to come back. That was short. Then Sexton says, watch me. Right over Kyrie. And he wasn't done. A couple possessions later, Sexton again. He's an 8th overall pick in 2018 out of Alabama, and he was as hot as could be last night for Cleveland late in this game. Harden, he's played 51 minutes. Conditioning also a question with him. Leaves that 3-point attempt shy. And Sexton, one more time, why not? Over Green. He scored 20 straight points for the Cavs during overtime. Finished with a game-high 42 points. Cavs win 147-135 in double OT. Here's Brooklyn.
We'll have good nights. We'll have great nights, but it's how we galvanize this group together and how we sacrifice and compromise for the greater good, you know, and that still remains to be seen. Obviously, one game's out the way, but I'm excited for what's to come.
Some great glimpses. We started off the game very, very, very good. Just the entire game, we just got to find a way to get stops when we need to.
It felt right. It felt perfect. It felt like we belong together. It felt like this journey together is going to be fun. You know, it was a tough first start, and especially it was an up and down game for us. But I like where we are.
So let's look at the lineups, because that's going to be something to keep an eye on all season long, really. When all three of the big three played together last night, Brooklyn outscored Cleveland by 3. When KD and Harden played, just those two, Brooklyn was +6. And for just 3 minutes, when Harden was the only member of the big three on the floor, the Cavaliers outscored the Nets by 11. Let's bring in our NBA analyst, Kendrick Perkins. And Perk, you played with Kyrie for a couple seasons there in Cleveland, so I think you know him better than most for sure. Based on how Steve Nash structured his minutes, what's the most important thing we should take away from Kyrie's return last night?
Well, I'll tell you one thing is that Kyrie is not sacrificing or taking a back seat to nobody, and that includes Kevin Durant and James Harden. I mean, he haven't played in almost 2 weeks and came back and put up almost 30 shots. Now, he was balling, but that's not what you wanted to see out of Kyrie. And the Brooklyn Nets got to figure out how they're going to sacrifice it. I'm talking about the big three, meaning they got to take 20 shots or less apiece and get others involved because they can't win that way. And if I'm Steve Nash, what I do is I use Kyrie as a 6-man type guy, meaning I would start him. I would take him out the game early, probably in the first quarter, probably the first 6 minutes. I would let him play, then take him out, and then bring him back with the second unit at the start of the second and just let Kyrie be Kyrie. But right now, the way that things going, it's not going to work offensively. They going to put up a lot of points, but you got to get the others involved. Joe Harris, Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan. They had 10 points off the bench last night. That's unacceptable.
The thing is that it's going to take time, right? This was just the first game with all three, so we do need to take a deep breath and allow them to figure this out, right? One thing we do know for sure, the old adage that defense wins championships, when the Nets acquired James Harden, you were adamant that defense will be the key for this team. That was an issue last night. Steve Nash said it. There were breakdowns all over the place. Perk, what's your biggest concern for this team defensively?
Well, look, I wasn't a fan of when they had to trade Jared Allen, but I figured, if you got to get rid of Jared Allen and get James Harden, you'll make that trade any day. But when you look at the Nets, last night they gave up 50% from the field and 50% from the three. And Colin Sexton obviously had it his way. They have to establish a defensive identity. If you look at all the champions, even go back to Golden State, the Golden State Warriors, yeah, they were great offensively, but they always ranked in the top 3 in every defensive category, and they took pride on the defensive end. That's what brings you back to hardware. That's what's going to get you those rings. And KD being the champion, Kyrie being the champion, James going to the finals, they know that defense is what it takes, and those guys got to lock in, and Steve Nash got to hold those guys accountable.
Absolutely. The A word, accountability. Coming into the game, by the way, the Cavs had the worst offensive rating in the league, but against the Nets, they shot over 51% from the field, Perk, including 50% from three-point range. But again, it's early. Hang tight. Jay has more.
I do, Sage. I got the Sixers and the Celtics with Joel Embiid coming off a 9-point performance his last time out, and I think he wanted to get that taste out of his mouth. He missed the Sixers last game, but came out dominant last night. 22 points at the half on 6 of 8 shooting. Through 3 quarters, he had 36 points, the most for a Sixer since Allen Iverson back in April of 2006. To the 4th quarter we go now. It's a tight one. Celtics are up 1. Jalen Brown with the floater. Team high 26, Celtics up 3, 103-100. Under 6 minutes to play. Embiid still doing it. Turnaround, 42 and 10.